Okay, I'm gonna get started. So first of all, thanks to those that could join live today. Excited about the topic today. Really focused on protecting assets and intellectual property in the research environment, particularly in the biopharma life science space, even the medical device space. Unfortunately, we continue to live in a world that is becoming increasingly violent, but also a lot of cyber breaches, particularly in the healthcare space. And David Fernicola, who's our featured speaker today, brings a lot of expertise in this space. We are going to be recording this session, as noted earlier. There's a chat function in Zoom, so if you'd like to ask questions throughout the presentation or at the end, please feel free to do so. I'm going to introduce David here briefly, and then David, I will turn it over to you. So David's got a pretty impressive background, and for me to memorize this would be pretty tough. So I'll just kind of give you the cliff notes, and you probably saw it in the invite. But David is an attorney, investigator, bioengineer, and trusted advisor. He's been a special agent with the FBI for over 15 years, deployed both domestically and internationally. He served as a case agent, legal advisor, coordinator, instructor, and training agent for complex investigations. So things such as RICO, intellectual property extortion, money laundering cases, you name it. Prior to joining the FBI, David worked as an attorney and technology transfer professional. He's worked all aspects of the technology transfer process. After his career with the FBI, David was vice president with one of the world's largest private security firms in the world. He worked closely with multinational companies to develop and implement security solutions. He's a graduate of the FBI Academy, as you can imagine, obviously, being a part of the FBI for 15 years. Been a recipient of multiple awards, Investigator of the Year, 2 citations for special achievement, and the Richard T. Ellis USA Award. He's got his Juris Doctorate from Syracuse University, Master in Science in Bioengineering from Syracuse, and a Bachelor of Science in Biology from William Patterson University. So I think it's safe to say, David, go Orange, right, for you. But I just appreciate you joining us today, lending your expertise to the audience and those that will watch this remotely or on recording afterwards. So I'm going to turn it over to you, David. Thank you.
Well, first, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for having me today. Thank you, Convergint, for taking a look at this very important topic, and one that continues to keep popping up in our newspapers and our feeds. We hear about it all the time. So today we're going to talk about, just as Chris stated, protecting research and research data from today's threats. We're going to take a look at some of the threats that are out there. We're going to look at about 7 cases that are there, all different districts throughout the United States. And we're going to talk about primarily trade secrets within your organizations, within academia, and the role that these trade secrets have and how to protect them when they're in their infancy, before they're even put out there to the world for that moment. So what are security professionals facing out there? Now, that's what we're going to explore. And as Chris stated, I'm passionate about intellectual property. I always have. Intellectual property is what separates nations. This is what separates companies to ultimately become more profitable than the other company. It's why working in academia and research institutions is so popular, because you could come up with that next invention that could push the envelope of humankind. What is the next latest and greatest thing? How do you protect it? And we're going to dive into that. As Chris stated, and he went through it, my name is Dave Fernicola, and I've been an attorney, a bioengineer, a technology transfer professional, and once upon a time, an FBI special agent, serving in both the New York office and the Miami field office. I've had trials in the Southern District of New York and in the Eastern District of New York. And as I stated, I'm passionate about intellectual property. And this is why we're going to go into the subject today. We're going to discuss the who, what, when, where, why of IP, but again, focusing on the trade secret. So here we go. But first, a disclaimer. So I'm a licensed attorney. Nothing in this presentation or its resulting discussion is to be considered legal advice or creates an attorney-client relationship. This presentation is for informational purposes only, and please consult with your attorney about your specific matters. All right, well, now that that's out of the way, let's jump into a question. So cost. Of course, a lot of us are in the private sector. There's costs to everything, whether you're working in a research lab, research institution, academia, private sector, even public sector, costs to everything. But what is the annual cost to the United States economy of three things? And we're going to lump them together for this purpose. As I said, we're going to focus on trade secrets. But what is the three things here? The annual cost of the U.S. economy of counterfeit goods, pirated software, and theft of trade secrets. It's between, and please give me two numbers. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to give you a moment, and then we're going to dive into this and then the numbers behind it. So please take a few moments, put it in your chat what you believe are the two numbers that this falls into. Again, counterfeit goods, pirated software, and theft of trade secrets. We'll give just a moment so that you can put your answers in.
Just for the record, I put my original guess in before. Now I sort of know the answer, right? But I put in my original guess for the record, David.
All right, I appreciate that. Okay, we got two numbers that are in there. Did anyone guess between 225 and 600 billion? Again, that is counterfeit goods, pirated software, and theft of trade secrets. But Dave, why is the number so large? Why is it between 225 and 600 billion? I feel that there's a few hundred billion missing in there. Why is the range so large? Because we simply don't know. We simply don't know. This statistic comes from the FBI. And a lot of times when these things go on, they may not even get reported. We may not know what the invention was worth because it was taken before it had a chance to get to marketplace. We don't know. We don't know, but what we do know is that it's having a humongous effect on the U.S. economy. Think about it. As a security professional, if you could save even a fraction of this number for your corporation, you're a rock star. Well, let's get into the trade secrets and the who, what, when, where, why of what happens to these trade secrets. So the cases that we're going to discuss today, and of course, the who, what, when, where, why, it's going to be over the last year plus. We're going to talk about some of the big cases that come down. You may have heard of them, you may not have, but we'll go through them. Let's talk about the why. Why does this even happen? Well, you know it. It's to gain a competitive advantage. You know how expensive the R&D cycle is, that research and development cycle. The blood, sweat, and tears corporations put in, the money they put in, the significant financial push that they put into these things, finding the right employees, getting individuals with PhD degrees, advanced degrees, the salaries that have to be paid out, the years it goes from trial and error. Did this work? I don't know. Did this molecule work on this? I don't know. Let's go over here. R&D, tremendous expense and time. But what if I told you, don't worry about it. Don't worry about R&D. Just steal it. Just steal the R&D. Now you as a company, boom, you get right up. Don't worry about all the stuff that was there, all that time and effort. Don't worry about getting a team that specializes in what you're trying to solve, in the industry that you're trying to solve to gain that competitive advantage. Just take it. Gain a competitive advantage. One of the main reasons why trade secrets are taken. And then, of course, one that's as old as time, human emotion, anger. Sometimes employees are just angry at their corporation or research institute that they're at. They want to hurt them. What are you going to do? You're going to take the thing that matters most, their IP, their intellectual property, their trade secret. Nobody knows about it. What if I take it and I publish it? I put it out there. What if I sell it? Ego, adventure, that thrill-seeking ideology, all part of the human emotion. But human emotion plays a factor in trade secret theft. What else does? Well, of course, a financial incentive. Some of the stuff that we are discussing, especially with the numbers we talked about, well into the 200,000s or 600 billion, excuse me. These are tremendous amounts of money that are going into these inventions. They may be the next latest, greatest thing. They may spur an industry of its own, a financial incentive. Imagine you have the secret and you decide to disclose it for a financial incentive. So finances, financial incentives come in. And then, of course, in some cases, trade secret theft occurs through coercion. Do this or else. And that's going to be from a third party, generally putting the squeeze on an individual, coercion. So gain a competitive advantage, human emotion, financial incentives, and coercion play why trade secret theft occurs. Who is behind it? Again, all this is publicly available. Please feel free to use the footnotes and research into it more. But like I said, this is a 30-minute seminar we're going to go through. So who Startups. Startups. Imagine you could start up a corporation without doing the R&D, without that tremendous first financial push for the corporation. You're already lined up to get to commercialization. You're already lined up to get this out to the public, to start sharing it, start sharing with governments. Startups have a tremendous incentive to cut down on R&D and get going quickly. Get those products out there. Spies, both commercial spies and those that are controlled by governments. Spies. They've been around for as long as time. Spies. The commercial side, hey, is what company A developing better than what we have? Maybe we should take it. We should find out who there is. And then, of course, on the government side, as I stated before, intellectual property trade secrets separates nations. Think about some of the greatest inventions that have come up, especially on the military application, over the last decade plus. Think about where the United States was in the 1930s and 40s. Yes, Chris.
Quick question for you. So when I think about spies and disgruntled employees, that's got to be a really difficult thing for organizations to manage, because this is a lot of times internal. How often do you find that it is an internal espionage case? How should organizations manage that to prevent that from occurring? Maybe some best practices or tips that you've seen working with multinational organizations on that front.
Absolutely, Chris. I'm glad you asked that. We are going to discuss some of the solutions that come up, especially when it comes to the insider or who's controlling the insider. Is it a government agency? Is it a commercial agency? How best to find them? Is it difficult? You bet it is. You bet it is. And you're going to see some major corporations that have had to deal with this and some of the problems that they go through. But we are going to discuss some of the solutions behind it. And really, what does it come down to on a lot of these is access. What do the individuals have access to at the corporation? And I want you to think of access in both physical and digital. How are they getting through the door, and how are they coming through that cable, the internet? How is that occurring? And we'll discuss some of those issues that are coming up. And then, of course, you see a lot on the cyber side: opportunists, organized criminals, and commercial rivals. Again, those two areas of access and trying to figure out who's who, especially as employees, are all over the commercial, all over the countryside, working in remote applications. All right, COVID has sent everybody everywhere, but you'll see these are the individuals behind the trade secret theft. What are we taking? Well, as Chris stated before, biotech. I mean, this is an area that is completely moving forward at light speed every day. Think about what we were suffering in COVID-19, right? Who's the first one that could get to a vaccine? And all the other ailments that are out there. The next latest, greatest drug. These things, biomedicine, high performance instruments, absolutely what is needed out in the commercial marketplace, as well as governments. Right? These are the things that are needed. And trade secrets related to these items, they're wanted. New materials. New materials will always be the case. Things that are more efficient, things that are cheaper. New materials. Computer numerical control machine tools and robotics. That's right. Robotics and artificial intelligence. Let's get the human error out of things. What if we can build things with no mistakes all the time? Every single item. Think of an assembly line. Every item is built exactly the same as the other two, exact specifications to increase reliability and efficiency. And they never go to sleep, and they never need to be fed. So anything with computer numerical control machine tools and robotics, absolutely needed. And you know it, and I know it. Anything related to information technology personnel, absolutely needed. In today's world, you see the amounts of jobs that are open for anyone working in IT, and the amount of data that is coming from information technology, especially with stuff sitting on clouds, sitting on computers, sitting internally on the internet, things that are already out there on the internet. This stuff is needed. IT professionals. And we're going to discuss on solutions why it is absolutely important to have IT professionals, those that know most about information technology, on a team for a response should something go wrong. And where does this occur? Of course, you already know where it occurs. It occurs in your office. It occurs at your institution. It occurs at your academic research facilities, your labs. That's where this occurs. But you know where else it occurs? Trade shows and conferences. And I was able to find two quotes that are basically two very different sides of the same coin. So one quote comes from Interfex. It's a trade show that takes place in New York City, and I believe it took place in April. They stated, it's where the newest ideas are shared, technology is unveiled, and the power of science through commercialization comes to life. The FBI says it's also a fertile environment for foreign adversaries to assess technology, identify and gain access to company personnel with knowledge of the technology, and illicitly acquire intellectual property. Now, of course, trade shows, yes, this could both be true. These are both true statements of trade shows and conferences, but it depends on how you look at it. Of course, you want to get your stuff out there. You want to see the commercialization come to life. It's the reason why the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office existed, right? To get these things out there. You got a new invention? Great. Let's get it out to the public. Let's start using it. But of course, it does have its drawbacks. How? How? Well, exploitation and attainment. They happen in many different ways. And you can see from the slide, yeah, there's a lot of cyber stuff that's on there, whether it be phishing, social engineering, unpatched software, connected devices, unauthorized access to computers. But again, the physical side of things. Who's walking around the lab? Who has access to the lab? Is there access to two labs? Maybe there's an academic collaboration or a joint venture between your corporation and another corporation. On joint ventures and academic collaborations, please ask yourself, in the agreement that we have, is it a two-way street? Is it really a collaboration? Is it really a joint venture? Or does it always feel like I'm giving and not receiving anything? And I'm always giving and not receiving anything. Take a look at that. That's generally an issue that you're going to want to try to solve, even with the researchers and from the individuals that are inside. Why is information always leaving but not coming in? And foreign travel. Outside the United States, your expectation of privacy, it's gone. So when foreign travel, high foreign travel program, know where your employees are. Where are they going? Who's approaching them at the cafe? What are they asking for? Hey, did they bring laptops with them with the company secrets on it? Did they have the cell phone with everybody's number on it? And we're going to discuss some of the solutions, of course, having clean devices when traveling overseas. But these are how trade secrets get stolen. Let's take a look at a case study. Our first one. And our first case study is about bisphenol A-free, BPA-free materials. Now, as you all know, BPA was used universally, and it was coating inside of cans or food and beverages to help minimize flavor loss. All right, you didn't want the food or beverage reacting with the container. So this case involved a PhD chemist out of the Eastern District of Tennessee, and the sentencing came down within a year or two ago. And it was about access to trade secrets, while this particular chemist was employed at the Coca-Cola Company and Eastman Chemical Company. And what we saw at trial, again, a 13-day federal trial, what we saw at trial is that developing, direct quote, developing these BPA-free alternatives was a very complex, expensive, and time-consuming process. How much, you're asking? How complex, how expensive, how time-consuming? Well, well-known corporations like Sherwin-Williams, BASF, Dow, they stated it costs nearly $120 million to develop this BPA-free alternative. $120 million. So the numbers that we discussed before, 200 billion, 600 billion, this is just one part of that. Just one part. And we're already at 120 million. So what happened? Well, the federal grand jury has a conviction here. And there's 5 different things, especially when you're working within your organization, again, academic institution, your company. These are the common violations that will come down related to trade secrets. And what are they? Conspiracy to commit trade secret theft, conspiracy to commit economic espionage, possession of a stolen trade secret, or economic espionage, and of course, wire fraud. So these are the statutes you will see that come up routinely in trade secret theft. And for this particular individual, they were sentenced on May 9th, so a little over a year ago, to 168 months, that's roughly 14 years, 3 years supervisory released, and a $200,000 fine. Again, this is all public information. You can find this out there and read about this particular case. But it was about access, and it was about working at 2 corporations. Access, physical access. Next case, and you probably have heard this has been very public. This is the GlaxoSmithKline case, and as well as a research institute in Switzerland. And this is about siblings. This case occurs in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. And how does it go? Well, it's insiders. Right? They're working for entities with access to research data. Well, what kind of research data? Well, it's cancer products. So a brother and a sister, brother residing in Switzerland, the sister residing in Pennsylvania, working in Pennsylvania, form a competing company known as Reno Pharma, and then rebrand what GlaxoSmithKline has been doing in biopharmaceutical cancer products. Now, it was assessed that the value of the stolen data and products were valued at about 10 billion. Again, this is one company, this is two companies, biopharmaceutical cancer products, and we're already in 10 billion. DOJ assessed it at about a billion, but either way, you're in a billion for a biopharmaceutical cancer product. The brother was extradited to the United States from Switzerland in 2019. What ultimately happens? Well, there's some guilty pleas for the sister and 3 associates, and those are conspiracy to steal trade secrets. Again, we saw this violation before. Conspiracy to commit trade secret theft. That's going to be a violation of 1832, 18 USA. And the sentencing. Sentencing occurs on August 2nd, 2022, so just over a year ago. And it's time served. So 8 months in prison for one of the individuals and 59 days for another. Now, DOJ requested 10 years and 7 years. They got 8 months and 59 days. I couldn't put any better than what U.S. Attorney Jennifer Williams put out. Intellectual property and why it's so important. And we discussed it. Yeah, it separates nations. It creates that competitive edge for corporations, but it's the lifeblood of companies like GSK, right? GlaxoSmithKline. It's intellectual property. And when it's stolen, it's a disincentive to research and development, which is why you have to prosecute these crimes. Because you don't want a disincentive. Think about what the United States Patent and Trademark Office does. Provided an incentive. You come up with the latest, greatest invention, you have the ability to exclude others from that invention. But it's out in the public. That's the incentive. And for many that do this incredibly intense research and development cycle, the time and money and effort. That's what it's about. It's about having that time frame to create profits, to get the company to get some sort of return on all the R&D that went into it. But if it's stolen, it's a disincentive. We don't want that. So what's new? What's happening out there? So over the last few months, and this occurred early in 2023, so just a few months ago, both the Departments of Justice and Commerce put an interagency enforcement together, which has a mission to prevent foreign adversaries from obtaining critical advanced technologies. And we discussed what's needed. So what are some of the cases that came down? Well, on May 16th of this year, so a few weeks ago, 5 cases were published. And again, you can view all these cases. They are out in the public. And one of the cases is known as U.S. versus Boganikos. And in this case, it's an Eastern District of New York case. And what you have is there's an arrest on May 9th in Paris. This involves a defense contractor for NATO. And what are some of the materials? Well, it was advanced electronics, quantum cryptography, nuclear weapons testing, and tactical battlefield equipment. There was smuggling and dual use technologies. And where was this going? Russia. Russia. Next case, U.S. versus Besedin and Patsulia. And this is a District of Arizona case. In this particular case, there's an arrest on May 11th in the District of Arizona. And this has to involve the Export Control Reform Act. Why? What's going on here? Well, there's aircraft parts going to airlines. What airlines? Russian Airlines. U.S. versus Lee. This is a Central District of California case. An arrest is done on May 6th. And what does this involve? High precision measurement, export controlled and trade secret technologies from 2 former Southern California employers. This is technology taken from 2 former Southern California employers. Again, the insider. He's working on the inside. U.S. versus Wang, Northern District of California. What's to know about this case? This is the Apple case. Very popular. You've seen it all over social media and the news. This is about the autonomous systems. And again, stolen trade secrets for autonomous systems. And you can see autonomous systems, of course, having both military and civilian applications. Last case, U.S. versus Qual, Southern District of New York. This is about isostatic graphite, which is basically used in the manufacture of rocket nozzles and reentry nose tips and intercontinental ballistic missiles. Where was this going? To Iran. Iran. So these are cases that are brand new. They've come down May 16th, and this is from the Disruptive Technology Strike Force, something that's been put together, of course, over the last few months. Now, let's talk about solutions. We talked a lot about the problems that are out there and some of the very recent issues that have come in within the last year plus. As I said before, a foreign travel program. Know where your employees are when they leave the United States. Where are they going? Who are they meeting with? Are they taking technology with them? Their laptops, external hard drives. They're taking cell phones with them. What's on those devices? Do those devices have the company secrets? Can they log in to get to the company's intranet? Foreign travel program. They're physically bringing things with them. Know what's being brought with them. Are they company, organization, materials, property? And is there any issues that are occurring out there? Right? That's that physical security provided to employees outside the United States. Here's one. No matter how sophisticated the organizations are, I see this routinely. It's physical locking mechanisms. And why does this become an issue? I'll tell you why. And it's probably one that's hanging on your belt right now or around your neck. It's these electronic key cards. The key cards are electronic, right? You put them up to something, they beep. You physically walk through a door. Who can turn on and off those keys? Is it the physical security personnel that have the access to that? Because it's electronic, is it the IT personnel or individuals that are controlling computer systems have access to turn those off? At your corporation or your research institution, please figure out who has control of locking mechanisms. Because should somebody be terminated, or separate, or retire, that access needs to be turned off. Have a checklist and state, yep, this particular individual's access has been turned off. They can no longer get into space, a lab, an office building, once they have been terminated or left the institution. Physical locking mechanisms. And one, two, I'm going to say it because I say it, cameras. If you have cameras, please make sure they're in good operating condition. Don't have it where they're aimed into the sky and it provides no data, or a bolt is loose and they're hanging and staring at a roof tile. I constantly see cameras employed all over, right? Doesn't matter what the institution is. There's cameras there, of course. They're an incredible tool. Sometimes there's condensation on the lens. You can't see what's there. I can't tell if it's a human or a dog. Have them in good operating condition. Right? I know you're thinking, hey, of course, Dave, of course we got this going. Please make sure that those things are going.
Hey,
Right?
David, how
Yes.
often during your engagements, in your different capacities, how often have you found that there isn't a really good process in place for, removing somebody from login credentials or physical access to a building? Maybe there's a delay. I think it happens not just in this industry, but outside of it sometimes, where there just isn't a good process in place. They don't have a good tracking mechanism, particularly if it's a smaller organization, right? What have you seen, and what are your recommendations around that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. And yes, it comes up. Doesn't matter how sophisticated or well-resourced an institution is, how many employees they have, it's a common issue. And really what it comes down to is having the same procedures and it being worked out with, say, legal, human resources, your IT department, and physical security. And have a checklist. If someone is going to be terminated, have a checklist. It's the same for everyone. Yes, we had issued when they started employment a laptop and a cell phone, and now we need those laptops and cell phones back. Right? That checklist will ensure, okay, they're being terminated or they're separating. Yes, we are taking off their electronic key card or any physical metal keys that were used to turn doors. I know it seems archaic, but they're still being used. Metal keys, getting that back. Right? Having this checklist, I think, helps, especially when everybody's busy during the day. They're solving other problems. Another fire has been created. You got employees trying to handle those issues. And we know it, especially in the security space, there's always something coming up. But having a checklist keeps people focused on the issues at hand, making sure access, again, which is the biggest problem in these trade secret deals, their access is turned off, both via the computer system and physically walking into lab space, office space, or any other space where the trade secrets or proprietary information of the corporation or organization, research institute, is held. Once separated, separated. There's no other way back in. You got to come through the visitor port like everybody else. Having that checklist, I believe, is a great way to keep everybody, yeah, no matter how busy, everybody on the straight and focused. Did we get our keys back? Has access been turned off? Electronic, electronic. Now we've been talking the two areas of access: physical and, of course, electronic or digital. So what are some of the issues we see? You see it, I see it. We talked about it before. So many problems coming in via the cable, the intranet, emails. There's phishing attempts. There's all kinds of data being extricated out of the company. What is going on? So this is where your physical security professionals and your IT professionals, they come together, right? Chris, you asked before about the insider. How do you see this stuff? Well, a great way to look for the insider is seeing what's going on digitally. Of course, you can see what they're doing physically. Are they going to different doors? Are they going to areas? They keep going into this one lab they really have no business going into. They were hired for project A, project B is in this lab. Why do they keep going there? Yep, physical thing. But on the computer, do they log on to the internet and seem to be going to areas of the internet they don't need to be in? For instance, you hire an accountant. Is the accountant in a mechanical engineering application room? Are they in a lab? What are they doing there? Why? Looking at that digital footprint, looking where people go while they're online, on the internet, on your computer systems, research institutions and or companies, it's a good way to see what's going on. Data use. Is there a lot of things being pulled and sent to an external drive? Why? Is something being sent to the cloud? Why? Why doesn't it list? Is it even possible to get stuff off the internet and send it somewhere else? Where are things going? As you read some of these cases that we discussed, you'll see, yeah, information gets sent to a private email. Information was sent to the cloud. Where's the cloud? Sent to a cloud, put on an external drive. But in today's landscape, especially the workplace, things are remote. So some people are at home, just walking through on the internet, finding stuff that they want to look at, talk about. Why? Maybe take, maybe sell. But utilize some of the applications that are out there today. Look at where somebody is digitally and where that access goes. Is there a lot of data coming off of that? And are they going to places they don't need to be at? It's a great red flag for you to find problems before they turn into much larger problems. And of course, these things converge. And you're seeing it with cameras, physical locking mechanisms, and the insider, which is why it is absolutely paramount that personnel at the organization, and by personnel, I mean a response team, a team that knows issues like this and can respond, because time is of the essence. When something has gone wrong, you want a team already assembled, not that you're picking one, and you want them from legal, cyber, right, your IT department, those that know the systems internally best, physical security, who came in and out, why and when and for how long, human resources, who are these individuals, where did they come from, what employees did we hire, what was the background procedures like, and supervisors, those on the ground. What do they see? Is there something that's out there? Was there something that was kind of like a red flag? Which is why you want non-threatening ways to report stuff. People see stuff, especially as you get older and age, you've developed a sense like, yeah, it just doesn't seem right. But a lot of these things converge with both the physical security and the cyber security. And that digital and physical footprint is very important when trying to find the insider. Do they come to the lab when nobody's around? Are they going to the office when nobody's around? Why? Is it normal for somebody to keep getting access to the lab at 2 a.m.? Nobody else seems to be around. Why do they go at this time? Maybe nothing. Maybe something. Do they bring in equipment with them? Their cell phone. Taking pictures. Right off the screen. Right off a board that somebody's been working on. And there's a molecular formula that's sitting on the board. It's very important. Imagine that formula for BPA, a BPA-free formula. Just take some cell phone photos. Is that allowed in the lab? So now you have somebody physically walking into a space and then using electronic devices to get it. And that may not even be registered on a computer. It's very difficult to find the insider. But these are some red flags that can help you. And again, who has the ability to stop access? Who could turn off the computer? No longer allowed in here. You're not an employee here. The computer is closed. Your password, your username, they don't work anymore. And they didn't work the moment you left this corporation. And you can't come through the door. The back one that we always use for the employees, that doesn't work either because we've turned off your keys. Again, having that checklist and going through it and making sure these different departments at your organization sign off on this will be great for you and keeping the problems that we discussed in these cases. Again, read them, see what went wrong. There's problems in these cases from coming to a much larger issue. Now, we got some time left for some questions and comments and thoughts. What do you have for me?
I got a couple questions for you, David.
Please.
Appreciate the insights. I'm going to ask you kind of two questions, but I'll ask the first one. So for established organizations in the biopharma research, life science space, probably doing some really good things today, I would assume, right? And probably aware of many of the things you talked about. But in your engagements, when they've had to kind of reassess and take a step back and change some processes and procedures, or maybe deploy some technology, what are some of the best practices that you've seen with some of those established organizations?
All right, Chris, great question. So when there's an established company, employees coming in, lab space, office space, think of this. Think of the devices that are going with you into those areas in which the intellectual property, proprietary information is kept. For some, maybe a good bet is that if they're bringing in cell phones, have a spot before entering the lab to put your cell phones in. There's no need for cell phones in the lab space. Cell phones, as you know, they're going to connect via Wi-Fi. You can have email access. The cameras can be all kinds of issues. You can have external saving capabilities. So the less that's taking into an area where it's proprietary information, right? That physical barrier, when you walk through that door, the less you're taking in with you, the better off that corporation is going to be, because they know, hey, they weren't taking cell phones in there. We know that if anything was taken, it was taken off of the intranet, and we can follow, we can see it, we can see where it's going. So keep external devices, cell phones, hard drives, USB devices, even disconnect that from the computers that may be in the lab space out there. And of course, you can always go back to pen and paper. Forget about computers in the lab space. Go back to pen and paper, especially when it comes down to writing these specific formulas. Lock them up in a safe or in a vault so that they're not on the wild, wild web, or they're not on the internet. So if you can control those external devices, it's a great way to control some of the problems that are associated with taking data from a research institution, from an organization, and getting it somewhere else.
There's a lot of startups out there today, obviously, with new novel biomarkers. Let's forget whether they were stolen from somebody else, but let's just say they were done with integrity, and you're starting up a new, maybe a biopharma division with an established company, or it's just a brand new organization bringing in novel technology or novel research to the market. Where do they start, right? Because they're not necessarily don't have the huge infrastructure, the huge teams, or the huge budgets to address it. What are some of those like critical things they need to be thinking about when they first start up? Obviously, when they evolve and mature, they'll start to add some capabilities there. But what are the bones, and the things that they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, Chris, so this goes back to the balance that has to be struck for corporations. It's getting things out to commercialization, and then of course watching, well, it's still in its infancy. Is somebody going to steal it? Is it going to be commercialized before we even get there? Are we going to be circumnavigated into that area? So one of the things that I believe, even for startups, when they're first starting out, they have, say, novel biomarkers. is if you have the research team, you've already put together stuff, you're creating, you're inventing, you see things go, get good protection for this. Do you want to go down the road of intellectual property protection? Do you want to get a patent on this? Is this something that you think this company is going to be able to commercialize? It is going to be a huge ability to profit from. Though that maybe getting a patent is the way to go. You can get a formal protection, right? The right to exclude others that are out there. So I would get a good legal team together. You have a good research team, you're already inventing, get a good legal team and discuss some of these issues with them to see, hey, yeah, this is something that we want to protect. Or let's limit access to only the few that know what this really is, right? Again, we talk about access, that digital, that physical. The less people know could help in figuring out if it does leave, who, where, why did it go? But usually the less of people that know about it, the more protection could be given to it because there's only a few, a handful that really know how to make this thing go to market. Getting a good legal team is a good way to go. And again, that's on the response side. Should something happen, of course, you want that in there. But this is in the beginning. This is in this infancy. This is that research data, those novel markers. This is new. This is for a startup.
You talked about, and we see this a lot in the industry. At Convergint, we're fortunate to work with some of the top biopharma, life science, med device companies in the world, and often we see this. I think the finger pointing both ways of who's responsible for what as it relates to overall security, inclusive of cyber, and that connection of physical security to the cyber piece, right? So it's not just protecting the physical assets, but also the intellectual property. And I thought that was insightful. So, in best in class organizations, how have they gone about, connecting those departments and putting really, who's responsible for what and when type scenarios? Because I see that a lot. A lot of times it's just budget, who has the budget, but a lot of times it's process. Who's monitoring, responsible for monitoring some of the technology, particularly some of the digital technology that's on the physical security side and the access points that it has there. So, just any additional insights on that would be great.
Yeah. So in today's corporate world and a lot of different research institutions, you'll see the role of intellectual property. Maybe something that's intellectual, right? So I can't really hold it. It's not physical. It's not IT. It's not cyber based. But where does it land? We're all in this together. So where does it land? It lands in the corporation protecting this, right? You need your cybersecurity folks, your IT folks, and your physical security folks all to take ownership of this. You are working on behalf of your corporation, right? That is the one team solution. You're all in it together. And you see the hundreds of billions that are leaving annually. Okay, so now you get your team. So who's responsible for it? Everyone's responsible for it. And in corporate structure that I see, probably about a 50-50 split. So for cyber and information technology, there's generally one that they'll report up into, and that could be the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer. And for the other, you'll see physical, and that could go to the Chief Security Officer. For some organizations, the CISO, the CISO, and the CSO report to one individual. Sometimes that's the Chief Division Counsel, Chief Counsel. That's going to be someone who may be the Chief Operating Officer. That's going to be someone generally in the C-suite that can see both areas. So they have responsibility for the IT cyber side and for the physical side, people walking through doors. In other corporations that I've seen, they keep it separate. Somebody reports into the Chief Security Officer, and that's an operation completely separate for themselves. And somebody's reporting in directly to the CISO as an IT one. I am a proponent of communication. I believe both sides need to communicate. And I do like where it converges into one individual that can see both sides of that coin. CSO, CISO, and the ability to protect information regardless of the form it comes in. Physical, cyber, we're all in it together. This is one team. If something goes wrong, if something gets stolen, we are all responsible. So let's protect it together. It's the only way organizations will strengthen, communicate, develop those teams together, have those meetings.
Excellent, thank you. So if someone wanted to get a hold of you for engagement or advice or counsel, how would they do that? What's the
Chris,
best way to do that?
this is Convergent's platform. And they would do that by talking to you, sending an email in, and then of course you know where to find me.
I can find you. I can find you. So you know, and I guess I will, you know, comment on that. So again, you know, first of all, the point of today was really around education, industry education, which we try to do at Convergent to bring to our, you know, current clients, obviously other clients that could be potentially in the marketplace. I'm Chris Lutz. My email is very easy. It's chris.lutz@convergent.com. So if you want to speak to Dave post this webinar, you can certainly reach out to me and I'll get you connected to him. Dave, I want to thank you for today and taking the time to educate the audience and future audiences who will watch this, obviously on recording. I want to thank those that were able to attend live today and thank those who will be able to watch this in the future. I think it's always good to bring industry education and relevant cases to that the industry's facing, right? And this is real, right? I know from talking to our clients, they face this every day. And we want to make sure that they're protected both physically and electronically as well. So just want to thanks again for your time. Thanks, audience. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you, Convergent.
Bye.